Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. We have Ryan back, who was in a previous video. Say hi, Ryan.
Hey Kyle. Hey everybody.
Sweet. Ryan and I had an idea to make a video. We both have been Marvel fans for a while. We are of that
Mhm.
age where we grew up watching Marvel movies, and I think we both weren't super impressed maybe with the past couple years of Marvel movies. We really
You like that
liked
one though, Eternals?
which one? You liked Eternals?
You liked it too, I thought. Unless you were lying to me, I don't know.
No, yeah, it was great. It's really, really good. Um, we we both liked the movie Thunderbolts,
Yeah.
and um, Ryan was talking about wanting to do a video. We were talking about Marvel movies, and then we both, like at the same time, were really interested in talking about the Thunderbolts because we both felt like we were noticing a lot of biblical imagery in the movie. And that's not to say that the director had some secret agenda to make it look like Jesus was in the movie, but um, I think Ryan and I both believe the closer you get to God and when you're spending time in the faith, you recognize these motifs and these truths everywhere, and it just especially came out in this movie. I felt like. You feel that way, Ryan?
Yeah, no, 100%. Yeah, honestly, I feel like you said it perfectly. Like when you're living the faith, it becomes everything, you know? Like every experience you have in life, you can kind of see God at hand. And I think movies, though, have a special role in that because they're telling a story. And the one of the main characteristics of God is that he creates, but also that he tells stories or he creates stories really. And so I feel like when you're watching a movie, especially that deals with such a sensitive topic and has um, a lot of action scenes as well that involve the sacrifice that for friends, like it's not very hard to find God at hand in it and to find, yeah, just like, literally as I was watching the movie, I'm like, this is Jesus right now. Like
Yeah.
it's crazy,
Yeah, there's a lot of moments like that.
Yeah.
So it's great. The premise of the movie, just to start, is that there's just a lot of hopelessness. The characters don't seem to have a lot of purpose or a lot of meaning, and that's kind of the premise for this ragtag team of people. The movie opens up with Yelena, who is the sister of Black Widow in the other Marvel movies, and she is depressed. She is hopeless. Yelena doesn't seem to have any purpose. She's trying to find meaning in her work, which I think a lot of people do in modern day America. It's like the path of least resistance is to just get busy with work, and it feels important and it's something you should do. Um, it reminded me a lot in I read recently the book of Ecclesiastes, which I never read before, and it's a bummer of a book, but it talks about trying to find like true meaning in a lot of things, and it mentions trying to find meaning in your work, like true meaning, and it's it's just depressing. The author pretty much says it's not possible, and it alludes back to Jesus, but anyway, yeah, Yelena and these characters opening up are just hopeless and looking for something to fill them with purpose.
Hmm.
Yeah.
I'd say the main theme of the movie is this idea that you can't outrun darkness. And it's highlighted from the first point of the movie when Yelena is literally on a rooftop and she kind of says that, you know, do you remember like the exact thing she said? I can't remember exactly what she said, but she alluded to this fact that like what's the point?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
everything's
She says, what's the point?
there's
Sounds
like
pretty
this I,
suicidal. It just sounds
I
bad.
think that there's even I think she even uses the word void.
Yeah,
I
she
think she
does.
might use the word void, which is really important because as the movie goes on, this idea of the void becomes stronger and stronger. And so, yeah, so she uses that point, and in fact, I think this was during a mission too, right? Or maybe it was
Yeah.
right before her mission.
Yeah, she was doing a mission and it seemed like it was just another day. She was just taking these missions just because it
Yeah,
was something to do. She
exactly.
is successful. She blows up a building, does whatever. It's I guess part of the plot, but nevertheless, she's just like a mercenary controlled by a political figure named Valentina,
A
who is from the show Seinfeld, and
lot of
she
people love that show.
yeah, it's a good one. She's kind of like pulling the strings behind all of these characters. She's sending Yelena on missions. Um, Yelena tries to confide in her father, who was never really around in her childhood, telling her that he's depressed, and he just says, "You need to be an awesome superhero again." So she tells Yelena, or sorry, Valentina tells Yelena, like, I'll get you a more superhero facing, public facing role if you do one more assignment.
Hmm.
So she agrees and she ends up having to go take somebody out, but it turns out these other misfit heroes are all on their own missions to take out each other. So they find themselves locked in a vault, which turns out to be an incinerator, and they end up fighting each other.
One of them gets killed too.
Yeah, one of them
Yeah,
gets killed, and that's where they find Bob.
yeah. And so when they find Bob, they're super confused because they're like, What are you doing here?" Um, and Walker, John Walker, he's not very nice to him at all. But they like you said, they were in a pretty bad spot, and they realized that they've all been sent there to basically be erased. And so once they realize that, they decide, okay, well, either we're gonna die or we're gonna work together. So they start working together, and as they're working together, they're able to get out of there, and
And
um,
that's a good point too. A huge theme in this movie, I think, is like loneliness, isolation. This is just a glimpse of it, but anytime that they work together for a common good, things start going their way. And anytime somebody like isolates themselves and tries to do things just on their own, um, it goes really poorly. And Ryan mentioned earlier that Yelena used the word void to describe her depression. And they don't know this when they meet Bob. They think he's just a regular guy. Turns out he's a test subject for an experiment, and he's actually he's got these crazy powers. Um, when they escape, they almost get blown up, and through all
yeah,
the rubble, Yelena ends up touching Bob. She gets transported in her mind to like her deepest regretful memory, which was her in school. She was part of this Russian ops school training assassin girls, and she lures one of her students out into a forest, and a teacher shoots her because she was told to do that. But it haunts her till this day, and she feels so dark when she thinks about herself and her past. So she wakes up from that and realizes she was touching Bob.
mhm,
Bob saw that in her, and they kind of tried to talk about it, and Bob just said like it's so dark it feels like a void, and she remembered saying that, so they both agreed that this was just complete and utter darkness they were feeling. Like it's depression, it's darkness. There's, from what I think, nothing of God, nothing of Jesus. There's no light. And the same thing happens with Walker. Bob ends up touching him, and it flashes back to him just being a terrible dad. He's worried about himself, reading news about himself on his phone while his baby's crying. It
mhm.
shows a pretty bad relationship he's got with his wife, and he's just like a jerk. And so anytime they're around Bob, it kind of they get a flashback to the worst part of their history.
Yeah,
And then out of that, they end up working together just to get out of this pit, out of this tunnel.
yeah, which they're able to get out of. And I think you make a really good point though about her having that flashback. And what I thought found interesting was that Obviously initially as it happened and she wakes up, she's like kind of like a little bit freaked out, as I would be. Like if I if you could like read my mind, like that, I'd be a little bit like, whoa. But I thought it was interesting how like she didn't pull away from him over time.
Mhm.
Like in fact, she get kept getting closer to him. Whereas you might say Walker was a little bit more resistant to it, more resistant to the healing, but she really wanted that healing for herself and she wanted that healing for him and she was longing for it. And so that was almost like an opening to their relationship as,
Yeah.
they became pretty good friends throughout the movie, I'd say. Or at
Yeah,
least
and Walker's
she was
got
looking out for him, you know?
yeah, she was. Walker's got this shield of like pride that keeps him like he won't even admit
Yeah.
that he's a jerk. At least Yelena will admit that her past
Oh
is so
yeah.
dark. And I think
Yeah.
you're right. That's what gets her to come a little closer to Bob. Um, when they get to the top of this tunnel to escape this government area, they end up trying to kill them all. So Bob, I think for the first time, feels like he actually kind of has some friends now. So to let them all escape, he ends up sacrificing himself. He gets everyone's attention, starts shooting a gun up in the air, and they put like 100 bullets into this guy
Yeah.
and
It
they
was crazy.
try to kill him. The other heroes drive off. They think Bob is dead, and that's kind of the end of scene.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. So yeah, from their vantage point, he's dead, and you could tell Yelena's pretty upset about it.
yeah.
Walker and I think the girl's name's Ava, right? And they're
Mm.
kind of like, hey, this is why he did it, so he can get away, and so they're able to get away.
Yeah.
Um, and they're kind of camped out in the middle of nowhere for a while until Yelena's dad comes and joins them and
Yes.
kind of thinks he's saving them. Um, But as that keeps going on, it keeps flashing back between that
And Bob,
and Bob. Yeah,
well, Bob is now like he's waking up from this coma. He got superhero or he knows he has superpowers now. So when they shot him, he's down. He ends up flying in the air, passing out, coming back down. Now he's like in a coma. He wakes up and he's with Valentina, who I know Valentina's not like pure evil. She's got her own things going on,
yeah,
but as
and it
far as
references
the
that
yeah, but as far as the plot goes, like she's definitely the adversary or the deceiver. She's pulling
for
the
sure.
strings and encouraging people to do bad things in the pursuit of power. Um, so I think she plays like the Satan in the Bible means the adversary or the deceiver. And so I think she's playing this role. So now that Bob is separated from his friends who are um they're broken people, but they have good interests in their mind. They want to help. Valentina now has him isolated, and it reminded me a lot of Genesis in the garden. She's kind of like the evil one talking to someone. The fact that Bob wakes up from this coma just reminds me of like a confused state where he doesn't totally know what's going on, kind of how I picture Adam and Eve are at the beginning of creation. And um, she tries to convince him like to use to be like God. She's trying to tell him that he can be like God.
Hmm.
And right when he wakes up, he has a good heart. He asks, "Where are Yelena? Where are my friends?" And what she immediately tells him is, forget about them. Let's focus on you, which I think sounds very Satan-like.
Yeah,
Um,
it's very self-centered. I think
yeah,
she even might say something along the lines of like they don't actually love you,
yeah,
and like I don't know if she uses the word love, but she kind of indicates that she cares about him
exactly.
and it's very similar, you're right, to the garden because that is, Satan's plea with Adam and Eve is that, or at least Eve, that he knows them. He's trying to look out for them and um or at
Yeah,
least
you're
maybe
right. She
maybe that's a
says,
little bit too far, but like like that he's trying to help them be
yes.
like God and God's holding out. And you can't trust God. Um and whereas she's saying you can't trust your friends, you can only trust me.
Exactly. You're right. I wrote down that she said to him, I'm the only one who knows your true potential, and it's limitless. She's just trying to convince him that he needs the power and she wants to use it for herself. But it just reminds me a lot of like the Screwed Tape Letters by C.S. Lewis. Just trying to get people fixated on themselves and what's bothering themselves instead of your good feelings, which is to help others and stuff. So,
It's also very similar. I mean, I'm sure you've watched Lion, Witch, and the Wardrobe, right?
yes, yeah.
It's, very similar to that scene where I don't remember the youngest guy's name, but where he
Oh,
meets
Edmund,
Edmund, yeah,
or
where he
yeah,
meets the witch, like
yeah,
she comes across as this nice person at the start where she offers him candy,
yeah,
but as time goes on, he starts to see, oh, she's actually, and I think that's the biggest thing with the devil is that no matter what he tempts you with, it's always for a bad purpose. Even
yeah,
if he can put good things in front of you, he can say, I can give you this job, I can give you this family, I can give you this, but um maybe not family because he does but you know what I mean. Like he can give you these things that seem good, but it's always to attract you to a bad thing, which is going away from God. And
exactly.
yeah.
Exactly. And one interesting part of the plot too is that Valentina, who's obviously got a bad agenda, she has like an assistant or an intern, um, who you see this kind of spiritual warfare thing going on with her, where she's like wants to do a good job, wants to please her boss, but she also knows what her boss is doing seems wrong.
Mhm.
So she's secretly kind of wanting to help these heroes, and Valentina gets a whiff of that and doesn't think she's being super loyal. So she just tells her, um, Valentina tells her assistant, there is no such thing as good and evil. Like, get that out of your head. There's only like bad people and even worse people. Pretty much telling her, like, it's subjective, it's all about power. Um, whereas, like, it sounds nihilistic, which is very against what is true, what is from God, that there is good and there's objective wrong in the world. And she feels that. And I think, like the deceiver would, tries to convince you, like, no, what you're doing is not bad. It's
Mhm.
just different, you know? Just if you like it or if it makes you feel good, um, it's not wrong. So I think that's what she was trying to tell her assistant.
Yeah. And she's still, again, it's all for her own agenda as well.
Yeah. So eventually, Valentina manipulates Bob and convinces and gives him a new brand, calls him the Sentry. That's his new superhero name.
Is it with an
She,
S or a C? I always wondered.
I think it's, I think it's with an S because she had like a belt or
Oh
something
yeah,
made
you're
of
right, it
S on it.
does. He
And
looks insane. Like he looks really like he looks cool, but like he looks super powerful in it.
yeah, and he doesn't look like himself. She even like dyed his hair blonde just to fit the
He kind of
stereotype
looks like you a
of,
little bit.
I get that a lot. Well, actually, I get Chris Hemsworth a lot. You remember
That's
that?
true.
Everyone in
Yeah.
college thought I was Chris Hemsworth. I see it. Yeah, I do. Um, but she's finally got Bob on her side. He's gonna do her bidding. So Valentina lures all the superheroes to a tower, and um, pretty much Valentina's like, "All right, this guy's gonna kill you," and the superheroes are like, "No, Bob, you don't have to do this." Um, at one point, Yelena says to Bob, "You don't have to do this. I know you." And then he looks right back at her and says, "No, I don't think you do." And Ryan and I will get into this, but Yelena plays like a Christ-like figure.
Yeah,
I
for
mean, she's
sure.
not Christ. She's got demons and did some bad stuff.
Mhm.
But she's the one who's pulling people out of this darkness in this movie. Um, and so she's trying to tell him, like, I know who you are. I know you're a good person, and like you don't have to do this evil. And his response is, you don't know me, which is, I think, what stops a lot of people today from pursuing a relationship with God is we think, I can't go to church, I can't do these good things, I can't tell people I like Jesus because they know who I am. Like, I know who I am. I'm a bad person. I sin. I'm addicted to things, all this stuff. So I just can't pursue a relationship with God, which is which is so contrary because God came to save the broken, he came to save the lost. And we always say, like, God comes to meet you right where you're at to help save you. He doesn't want you to save yourself and then want to talk to you once you're
Hmm.
saved. So
Yeah.
this is kind of the thing. Yelena's telling him, don't do these bad things. I know you. Let's stop it right now. Bob's all confused. He ends up fighting them, beating them up. Maybe I'll put that scene in there. Goes crazy. Um, Bob thinks
It's a cool scene. It's also
it
in the
is.
old Stark Industry building or whatever.
Yeah.
Uh,
Shout out Robert.
yeah, good aura.
It is. And Bob is confused. He thinks he's a god, and then he,
He's nice to them though. He could have
yeah,
easily killed them, you
they
know,
do
like
attack him first.
yeah, like he's throwing them out of buildings and then pulling them back. Like he's basically just flexing his power on them. Basically saying like I could kill you but I don't want to because I like you. Just leave me alone, you know,
Yeah.
is essentially what he's trying to do.
He ends up beating them. They run away scared because there's like just nothing
Yeah.
they can do. He's super powerful,
Yeah.
and I think Valentina underestimates the fact that he immediately decides like, why am I listening to you? Like you're just some lady. So he ends up turning on her and he tries to kill her. And she thought that maybe this would happen, so she had a built-in kill switch made so she could just instantly kill off the Sentry or Bob if he ever turned on her. She dropped the button, is on the brink of death, and then her assistant came and saved her, pretty much.
Hmm.
Um, and that's when Bob goes on a crazy psycho.
Yeah.
He's
Well,
now
he's dead for
dead.
a bit, but not actually.
Yeah.
And
Resurrects again, but not in a good way, not in
not
a
in a good
Jesus
way,
way.
not in a very good way.
Very
No,
bad way.
it gets very dark after that. And yeah, I was confused because I was like, as I'm watching the movie, I'm enjoying it, but I'm like, whoa, he just died? Like, isn't he like the main guy? But
Yeah.
yeah, so what happens next is it shows the Thunderbolts going down, like going down the elevator, basically giving up. Some of them still want to fight. Like, well, the only one that wants to fight is Elena's dad, but he's a bit he's a bit crazy. And the rest of them are like, yeah, we have no chance. We're done. And as they're kind of arguing, there's also actually a really beautiful scene between Yelena and her father, where she's kind of saying, do you want to kind of talk about that? I don't know if you remember that part.
I I didn't take many notes on it, but I do remember that just that they were both very broken. And I think it was one of those things where she was mad at him saying, "You're my dad and you weren't even around." And
Yeah.
he kind of breaks down and says, like, "I'm a failure. I didn't think you'd want me to be around," which is um also just a pretty common theme. Like if if you love someone, show it and don't let your
Yeah.
own guilt and your own shame get in the way of that because
Yeah.
it's obviously been stopping them from having a relationship. But he says something like, I don't, when I look at you, I don't think of
Yeah.
your past. I just think of like who you are, the person I love.
Hmm. Yeah, no, you're right. He says like when I see you, I don't see that. And it's very
Yeah.
similar to what God says to us. Um, and it's a very hard balance because it doesn't conduce to this relativism, like, oh, God's okay with whatever I do.
Yeah.
But it does say that even when we're at our very lowest, God still loves us and sees
Yes.
um, as you know his children and maybe his children that are suffering and in need of him, but he doesn't forsake us. And I think that's a really important reminder for all of us, you know, for me, for you, for anyone that watches this video, is that no matter how far down you go, God has gone further and it gives him the ability to go and see you that way.
Yeah.
And yeah, no, and
I
just
wanted
thinking
to add
about
one more thing after this. I had
yeah.
one more thought on that.
No, for sure. Um, you want to go now?
Just before we get off it, Yelena, I remember, was freaking out at her dad, like we talked about. But before we had that heart to heart moment, she was like crying. She was saying, she didn't even say like, she didn't say, I'm so mad because we got beat up. She didn't say, I'm scared we're going to lose the fight. The city's going to burn. She just screams out, I'm so alone. And she's
Mhm.
just telling her dad she feels so lonely because that's the root. Like, although, sure, the city's falling apart, that's the root of why she's been depressed for so long.
Mhm.
She doesn't say like I'm scared because there's aliens invading. It really hits home because it hits people. They feel like they're part of this Marvel movie. In the first Avengers movie, they're just worried about like Loki invading the city. Now, what's killing this team is like depression, loneliness. She says, all I do is go on my phone and I think bad about myself, and then I go to work, and then I drink, and then I go on my phone again. This is
Mhm.
supposed to be like the hero of the story, and she's doing what so many of us do today, just stuck in that depression
Okay.
loop. And it's
Yeah.
mostly stemming from thinking she's not good enough to be anything else.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, that's a really good point. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But I also think that like her father saying that to her, saying that when I see you, I don't see your mistakes, it almost empowers her to do what she does next.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? To go
Yeah.
and step into that mess even more. Because she was kind of always the person that was holding everyone together, but what she does next is really what, you know, saves saves Bob, but saves everybody. And
Yeah.
so like the next part of the movie gets really cool because it's all sci-fi. It's in this realm that isn't actually like
Well, Bob
it's,
he starts destroying,
yeah,
all you see is a shadowy figure, which is now called the Void, which is like the
yeah.
evil side of
And
Bob.
it's him, but he's just fully a shadow. So you
Yes.
can't even see his face. Like it's just
It looks
yeah.
like there's nothing good left of Bob. It's the evil version of himself. And he just starts turning people into shadows, turning
Yeah.
people
Just by
into,
looking at them, they
yeah,
start turning into shadows. And
turning
he's
them into the void, I guess you could say.
yeah, and he as he's doing this, he's saying this he has this phrase where he's saying, you guys all know it. Nothing matters. Um, darkness is following you. Like he's saying all these really dark things as people
Yeah.
are turning to shadows, and the city's turning to shadows. So the city's just going into chaos because
Yeah.
people. It's almost like that scene in Infinity War when everyone disappears because
Yeah.
since people are turning into shadows, the cars, the planes, everything, buildings are falling. Like
Yeah.
it's extreme chaos. And so they're watching this, all the Thunderbolts, they're like, okay, now we need to just save as many people as we can. And as they're watching this, Yelena is just standing there and she makes it seems like a conscious decision to walk into the void.
Yeah.
And as she does that, obviously her father loses it. He's just like hysterically crying. They have to hold him back, and um, but she goes into that void. And the crazy thing about that is when she goes into that void, she had no idea what she was signing herself up for.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd have to assume that she knew something. She might have maybe, but again, it's you're taking a chance. You're going into something that you don't know for certain. I think she maybe thought the way to fight this void is to go in it, which is totally correct, and it's the whole point of the movie. But she still was taking a massive risk. Like her life could have just been over by going into that thing. But she took that massive risk and she goes into that void and she starts experiencing these it's a she goes to her past again, and I think the first scene is her, the one you described earlier, as a child. She's watching her friend or at least her classmate be killed, and she's just watching it over and over again. She's trying to fix it, but I think there's even a part where she says it's too late, you can't fix this, what's been done. And
Yeah.
so it's obviously not good. She's going to another experience. Now she's in her bathroom. It's it's a a version of herself, like drinking a tequila bottle, and she's trying to get her to stop, I think, and then she starts making her drink the bottle. It's again, it's a really
Yeah.
nasty.
It's
I
just going from door to door. They're
Yeah,
transitioning to the worst
like her worst
memories, the
moments.
darkest corners of themselves.
Exactly.
And and that's happening for all these characters that end up
We only
going
see
into the void.
hers, but yes, yeah.
Yeah. And then she ends up through a mirror sees Bob and he's like vulnerable. It's the Bob we remember from the beginning of the movie. He's like a little bit
Yeah.
confused and
Mhm.
scared, and she ends up going into his room, and she's like, "Oh, this room's kind of quiet." And it's like the quiet attic where he, as a younger boy, would remember, like, you could then hear his dad is abusing
Mm,
his wife, he's
yeah.
beating him, his son, and it's just
It's a really bad.
terrible.
Yeah.
The
And the
room
saddest
starts.
part,
Yeah, yeah, go
sorry,
ahead.
no, you can well, the
Nothing.
saddest part about that scene is when she comes in, she kind of explains to him what's happening in New York, and she's like, "Are you gonna do anything about it?" And he's like, "Nothing matters. There's no real point." But she asks him this question, or he says, at least it's the best room, like, and so the saddest part about this is that this place he's in, the best room is still a horrible room.
Yeah,
Like it's a horrible place he's in, where, but yeah, you kind of mentioned, I think you were alluding to that tornado that happens. I want to talk about something that happens before that. They kind of flash back to New York and they show that it's going into darkness. But one of the people on the Thunderbolts says, if she went into that void, she must have done it for a reason. And they
mm,
don't actually show them going into the void, but that must be the moment where they say, okay, we're going to go into the void too and engage in this fight.
yeah,
And so as they go in, or when that tornado happens, all of them appear in that room.
yeah,
And this was probably one of my favorite parts of the movie is Yelena looks at him and they're ready to go to war for this guy to help get him out of this place. Because they've done the healing themselves. They went to all their dark places. And Yelena asks him, so she says, "So this is the best room. So where's the worst room?" And the reason I like that part so much is because it's just so relatable to the story of the gospel that um in the movie, in order to redeem Bob, they have to go to the worst corner of his soul, the worst moment of his life.
mm,
And it's so true about God because when you look at I think what's his name? Father Mike Schmitz. You've probably heard of him,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
He talks about this idea that the worst moment in history. A lot of people think it's Jesus dying on the cross, and that is true. But the worst moment in history is when we decided to sin in the garden, or Adam and Eve decided to sin in the garden, and they were kicked out of the garden. And that was the darkest moment in human history because
yeah,
we lost what was once ours. And um, the in scripture it often talks about, I think in Romans 5 specifically, it talks about how Jesus is supposed to be the new Adam
yeah,
and that and there's a lot of parallels. I don't want to like just list them off the top of my head because I don't want to get it completely
yeah, yeah,
wrong. But there's a lot of parallels between Adam and Jesus. And even the fact that the tree of life and then Jesus dies on a tree, dies on a cross. And but if you look at Adam's life, or at least the short account of we have it in the Bible, it's marked by disobedience whereas Jesus's life is marked by obedience.
yeah. He comes to
Obedient,
do what
yeah.
Adam couldn't do.
He
Yeah,
yeah, to go and redeem us. And so I would say that that's the gospel narrative of going back to undo what was done,
yeah, for
to
sure. She's
reverse
like
it.
she's like the Jesus character who takes you to that moment where you decided to rebel against God and helps you turn it around.
Yeah, and the funny thing about it too is that this actually, in a sense, is the moment he kind of rebelled in a really rebellious way because the darkest place that's revealed to us is when he had that treatment.
Yeah, he's at his lowest
Um,
point, and he's
yeah,
willing to
he's
do
at
a
his
an experiment that'll kill him
exactly
probably.
kill him basically, or at least, it's not a good experiment. It's not something that um necessarily he should have been doing. And again, he was in a really dark place. I'm not trying
Yeah,
to like I feel for his character a lot. Like I'm not saying
yeah,
that he's a horrible guy because he did this, but he it was his darkest moment, and so it is interesting how they have to go back to that place. And it's the same place where the beginning of the movie starts because that's where Yelena, um, does her first mission in the movie. And
Mm,
so,
yeah.
so once we get there, they see that bad version of Bob, basically that shadowy, almost demonic figure. And as soon as he enters the room, he starts, kind of discouraging Bob, saying, You're alone, nobody loves you, nothing matters, all this stuff. And actually, as soon as he sees Bob's friends, all the Thunderbolts, they're all thrown up against the wall, tied up against there, pretty violently too. Actually, Walker's the only one who gets like I think it was a knife like through his chest. Like it was pretty intense. And so they're all, thrown up against the wall, suffering a great deal too, which adds to this idea that they really risked something going into this void to save Bob. And as they're watching this happen, uh, or as they're against this wall, Bob is just continually being tormented by
Bob
this.
starts fighting. He kind of like doesn't the
Yeah.
Bob
Well, at first
is
he doesn't, but then eventually he starts fighting
okay.
back,
Oh, you're right. You're right. Bob
and
gets the guy just makes fun of him for a bit. Finally, Bob's had enough. He goes
yeah,
up and's
he's
like,
like, I'm gonna go,
he's like, I'm not
and
scared of you. Then they start
yeah,
fighting.
and it's the thing about it is because you're like at first you're like, okay, he's fighting, but then it turns into what the person or what the figure wants.
Yeah.
And Bob's being very consumed by anger. Like he's punching this guy or punching this, almost I don't know what you call it. I
Yeah.
guess,
Villain.
shadowy demonic figure. But he's laughing, the guy's laughing. Like it's
Yeah.
not phasing him. And so which
The
I mean,
darkness, like the anger he's letting out, is consuming him.
exactly.
And
It's consuming him. It's almost like Venom in the
I
Spider-Man.
was gonna say it reminds me of the Tom Holland scene in the newer
Yeah.
Spider-Man where he's like gets Green Goblin, the guy who killed his aunt,
Yeah.
and Green Goblin's laughing and he's like beating the crap out of him and he like doesn't know when to stop. He's just so angry. And in this case, in that case it was the other Spider-Mans were able to they know him, they know what he's been through, so they try and help him stop. And he realizes he's going too far, which is a balance between like justice and like over and doing evil yourself, killing for the sake of it. And so Yelena sees this happening. He's almost consumed by this whole darkness
Darkness.
now, by the
Yeah.
bad part of himself. And Yelena pushes through. And I like you said something
Everything's
about
flying at her too, right?
yeah,
Like that, like it's a very dramatic scene. Like she's narrowly able to get out of that thing and then she's running towards him. And it wasn't plates that were flying at him, but like or her, but like everything you could think of in that room is coming at her and she's just kind of dodging it, gets to him, and then even Walker pulls the knife out of his chest. And so she finally gets to him. And all she does is she says, I'm here. I'm here. And she starts hugging him. And then the rest of the team comes behind and they start hugging him too. And there's like this group hug going on. And he just starts bawling his eyes out, crying. And they're like, Elena's like, it's okay. I'm
it's like a
here.
Jesus encounter, what you
Yes.
would
Yeah,
expect.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Like he just finally, is at peace. And he realizes that, you know, my biggest takeaway from that is, and why I felt like it related to Jesus, was that it showed that he was worth fighting for, that his life was pretty messed up. He's a burden. He has a lot of things going on in his life, but Yelena and her five friends found it worth risking their own life to go in and save him and do whatever they can to get to him to go and heal him. And that's Jesus, I mean, our faith tells us that, he descended into hell and rose again on the third day. He went to the darkest place imaginable to go and redeem us and to
Yeah.
save us.
For
And
us, not for him.
yeah,
Exactly.
and that's like in one point I made that I think is super crucial. Well, that it took presence, sacrifice, and love for him to be saved in that moment. And that's exactly what Yelena did. It's the same thing, that Jesus did for us. He became present among us. He sacrificed his own life for us. and with the greatest act of love. And um, the healing though that comes for Bob, it doesn't come just in one way. It comes in two different ways. It comes um from physical touch, like she is physically hugging him,
Yeah.
and it also comes from words of affirmation, basically saying that I'm here, you're not alone. And I think there's something that's so important about both. Like we can't just have one or the other. And I think that Jesus, as he was walking among us, he tangibly offered that when you read the stories. You think of like the story of the woman with the hemorrhage for, I think it was 15 years, or maybe it was 12 years, I can't remember. But um
She touches
she
his
just
cloak.
she just says, if I could just touch him, I
Yeah.
will be healed. And she is, you know? But the thing that's cool about that story too is that Jesus asks his disciples, "Who touched me?" Because he recognized that someone touched him, and the disciples said, "Are you crazy?" Like, and I like how the disciples like low key like they they kind of like I would not I don't know. It's hard to say, but like I probably wouldn't talk to Jesus like that with like a attitude.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
they
They do
but
that a
maybe
lot.
on a daily basis I probably do in my own way, so I
Sure.
can't really say too much. But
Yeah.
they're like, "Are you crazy? There's like thousands of people here. Like,
Yeah.
what are you talking about? Like a bunch of people touched you." And he says, "No, I felt someone touch me. Who was it?" And so then the lady, she's like getting really scared and she's like, "It was me. Like I just," and I'm not going to quote it because I I can't remember exactly what she said, but um he not only wanted her to be healed physically from that, he wanted to heal her emotionally too. And
Yes.
that's why he gave her that experience. He could have just let her touch him and could have went on with his day, but he said, "No, it's important for me to not only have you be healed, but to acknowledge that you exist and to acknowledge that I've seen your pain and suffering
Yeah.
and to tell you that you've been saved because of your faith now." And
Yeah.
have that encounter with her that happens through physical touch, but also physical presence, you could say, and through words. And I don't know. I just thought
Yeah.
I'd add.
For sure. It's a good moment. It's a total Jesus encounter. It's all of that. Um, he now feels comforted. Um, I think what we would say it's a it's a Jesus moment. That's a moment people should have in their lives when they actually want to follow God. In this, he's more just comforted by like his friends and the love they have for him, which are great things. That is of Jesus. If it was a Christian movie, it would probably have a little bit more of an
Mhm.
explainer of a relationship with God, but he ends up getting out of that terrible headspace. The city clears up again. Um, and it's just a Marvel ending. It's pretty much a happy ending. They're gonna be a superhero team.
Well, the,
Um,
the ending's kind of funny too, like
yeah,
because it's such an emotional ending. Like he goes from that hell, and then they're hugging each other, and as they're hugging each other, they fall back into New York. So
yeah,
it kind of proves this point that they were actually in some sort of realm that was not New York,
yeah,
and but yeah, once they get back to New York, all is well. I mean, there's other stuff that happens at the end of the movie. It
yeah.
doesn't
They'll
have as
watch it.
much to do.
It's
It doesn't have as much to do with this video we're making, but I will say it does set up the rest of that universe nicely if they
sure.
play their cards right. But
They
I
have the
thought it was really
opportunity.
cool. And I'll make one note. This is
Yeah,
less about, but I thought one cool thing I'll say about the movie is I thought just the characters, they all worked really well together.
yeah.
Like there was funny ones, there was serious ones, and they all just meshed with each other really well, which made a good team.
I think so too. I think Marvel did a good job with this one. I
Yeah.
I wanted to go over just a few quick themes that we noticed for the whole thing that kind of brought it all together. Um, there's a lot of light and dark. There's a lot of spiritual warfare. It's whether you follow Jesus or don't, it still makes it sound like you have to make a conscious decision every morning to when you wake up. Am I going to be depressed? Am I going to pursue something greater than myself? Am I going to try and follow Jesus with my actions? Um, I thought that loneliness was a huge theme. Like I mentioned before, when they're alone, they really don't feel like they're with God. They have no hope. Um, we've talked about this before. I really like Bishop Barron talking
Mhm.
about, I think it's Dante's Inferno.
Yeah.
Everyone's got their own idea of what they think hell would be like. I just think it's the absence of God,
Mhm.
something, a place, I don't know, something without the love of God, which is scary. A lot of
Yeah.
people depict that as burning fire. In Dante's Inferno, it's like a freezing cold place. And at the very center of that cold place is Satan, and he's stuck and frozen to the ground, and he's trying to get out of it. And as he's doing that, he's flapping his big frozen wings, which is just making all the other people who are stuck colder around him. And it just reminds me of like these people when they first met, they were miserable and they all felt alone. And they're making each other feel more miserable and more alone. It's really contagious. That's the whole flip side of the kingdom of God.
Yeah.
Jesus is calling us to bring heaven on earth, and it's really contagious. Whether you're a Christian or not, if you say something nice to a lady at a store, she's going to have a good day and she's going to treat her family better. But it's much bigger than that. It's not just saying one nice thing, it's actually living your life in a way that would honor Jesus. And the more we do that, the more contagious it is. And I think Yelena was trying to get a sense of that a little bit and
Oh
was
yeah.
putting
Mhm.
that on Bob. And it was contagious to the whole team. The whole team seemed to have a new hope and a new purpose. Um, yeah, there's a lot of themes overall. I just thought it was a great movie. I think you shouldn't try to be like God. I thought that was another big theme. They tried to create
Yeah.
Bob so that they could have a way to
Perfection.
be like God, just like in the garden when Satan told Eve, oh, he just told you not to eat because he doesn't want you to be like him. Um, or like the Tower of Babel trying to build up to the heavens to get to God in a way that he didn't intend them to. So, overall, it just reminds me, don't try to be a God. Try to align yourself with the will of the one true God and be closer to Jesus. It makes every facet of your life better and the people you interact with.
Thanks, Kyle. No, those are really good points. Like I'd say that thing you said at the end too, just aligning yourselves with God. And that's a very hard thing to do because there's so many things in our own nature that make it difficult to do that. Like in my own life, I'm speaking from my own personal experience. Um, as you continually do it, it definitely becomes easier. Like the things that I struggled with 3 years ago, I, by the grace of God, don't really struggle with them as much.
Yeah.
There's still a threat, it could still one day, be a temptation, but um, yeah, there's still things, as I'm living today that will be hard,
Yeah.
but I think you're totally right, aligning yourselves with God, but also giving yourself motivation to do that as well. It's obviously it's narrow at times and it's not easy and you have to carry your cross, but I think movies like this are fun ways to remind yourself of why you're doing it and for the purpose of love, that God is a loving God that loves us, cares about us, wants to be with us, and He did a really loving thing for us, and therefore, the right response would be to love Him back, even if that means sacrificing some things in our own personal life.
For
And
sure.
I think that also just that simple gesture, like you said, just smiling at someone, being nice to someone in the store, like it is contagious, and we see that in this movie that you see like one thing about John Walker is he starts this movie off as known as this jerk. And personally, I kind of obviously he is a jerk, but I found him kind of funny at times. A lot of people really don't like him. Like a lot of people that, watch Marvel movies are like, "Oh, this guy's like the worst guy ever." Um, you know, but there's also this other side to him that's been through a lot and you kind of understand, okay, maybe this is why he's being this jerk. But as the movie keeps going on and you get to that final scene where they get to that place with Bob, his whole tone changes and it's contagious because Yelena, the whole movie is planting these seeds of I was gonna say hope, but
Yeah.
almost these seeds of um I don't know,
Yeah.
togetherness,
Yeah, that's a better way to live.
empathy, love.
Yeah.
And at first, I mean, it's like she's dropping the seeds and they're not taking root at all. Um, he's obviously hardened in his heart because he's been through so much pain, or maybe he's just not a good guy, whatever.
Yeah.
And but as it keeps going on, you get to that final scene and he's the one who gets the knife through his chest and he's still encouraging Bob. He's saying, Bob, you got this.
Yeah.
And it's funny how he's the guy doing that because it could be anyone else and you wouldn't really think much of it but because it's him, it's like, oh, this guy's really changed. And it points to so many things. It points
Yeah.
to that love in itself is contagious. When you love someone, it's easier for other people to go love other people, but also there is transformation and suffering too, right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, um, Walker has to suffer a lot. I mean, he went into his own void and faced all this stuff, and it finally brings him to this place of surrender, but also brings him to this place of probably compassion for other people and their suffering.
Yeah,
And
well, he
so,
had a big pride issue too, and that's what
Mhm.
made him such a jerk at the beginning and what transformed him at the end. He, unlike the other characters, yeah, just had a total pride thing. And the opposite of pride is humility, which I
Yeah.
think he learns later. And I think that the characters have a messed up sense of humility, and I think a lot of people do today. Like I've said this before, C.S. Lewis wrote like, is it humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. So
Hmm.
when people like Bob feel upset at themselves, they're like telling themselves, I stink, I'm the worst, I'm not good enough, I have a terrible past. That's not the point. The point is you're just not supposed to think about the evil that has happened in your life. You're supposed to get fixated on the good. So, and that's a advice to anyone who's feels like they may not have an issue with pride, but to be humble doesn't mean to think you're bad. To be humble
No.
doesn't mean to put yourself down and to bring others up. To be humble just means to take the negative side of yourself out of the equation and focus on the good, focus on Jesus.
Yeah, and one thing too that um is maybe sometimes misinterpreted in Christian theology, um, and some people might not necessarily see it this way, but this is something that I've been learning over the past year as I've been dealing with, what life's brought, is that before we before the bad there was good, in the sense that God's original intention for us, we were made in his image and likeness. Like we were created good. And we messed that plan up. Adam and Eve messed that plan up for us and we became sinners. And then Christ redeemed us. But that it is it is actually not a bad thing to acknowledge that we were created in God's image and likeness. And it gives us a sense of dignity
Yeah.
that we don't have to, because a lot of people have this negative, reputation about Christianity that like, oh, it's just trying to tell me all the bad things about me.
Mm.
Whereas the point of Christianity is to restore what was lost.
Yeah.
It's to actually tell us that we were created good. We lost that goodness for a bit, and we're prone to disobey God. But Christ came so that we would be redeemed and restored to our original dignity, and that we have an immense value to God. And not because he wants to use us for his own purpose, but just because he loves us and he cares about us and he wants us to be restored to how he created us. And he'll always give us a choice to do that. He won't force it, but he cares about us a lot. And I think if if we could take anything away from that video, I hope that it would be that God is in the business of restoring people,
Yes.
not condemning them, not
Yes.
using them, not trying to, yeah, he all he wants to do is restore people to their original design, which is, we were made for heaven. We weren't
Yeah.
made for
Unity with
the
God.
world.
Yeah,
We were made to be with God forever. And anything less of that makes God sad.
for
And
sure.
that's why he does all this stuff. And
Yeah,
there, yeah, I think if that's my hope is that
I think
anyone
so
that's
too.
gotten this far, and if you got this far, you're loyal.
Yeah,
But
I
if
think
you've
that's a
gotten
great
this
way.
far,
Yeah,
I hope that is one of the main takeaways.
yeah, that's a great way to wrap it up, Ryan. God is in the business of transforming lives and restoring us back to full unity with Him. Being alienated from Him is depression. Being with Him brings life, and it's contagious.
Mhm.
Thank you, Ryan, for making the video, and thank you guys so much for watching.